76% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Is that you? I'm the CEO of 5 different companies. I wasn't born into it. We lived on welfare, but I wanted more. I created this show, The School of Wealth, helping people escape poverty like I did. I want to help you out of that consumer debt, teach you how to increase your credit score, teach you how to make more money at your current job or your current business, and then how to actually create generational wealth without changing your lifestyle. It is going to be a lot of fun. This is not like regular school. Hey, I'm Rondi Lambeth, and this is the School of Wealth. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Rondi Lambeth, and today I have a special guest, which all my guests are special, but this one is extra special to me. I spend about 10 to 15 minutes every single day for the last week with him, and that's because he just wrote this amazing book, or at least it just got published. And the book is called A CEO Only Does 3 Things. Based on what I've read so far, I think it's going to be a New York Times best-selling book. So it's my honor to have author, businessman, father, and entrepreneur Trey Taylor. Thanks, Trey, for coming on the show.
Rondi, my brother, good to see you. Thanks for having me on here, and thanks for all the support that you've given the book. I'm really pleased that it would be something that caught your eye.
Yeah, I really like it. You know, I read this, I put it on Instagram, and I tried tagging you on Instagram. Can I not tag you on Instagram?
I don't do Instagram except to look at what my wife is wearing on Instagram. I only follow 1 or 2 people, and that's one of them.
Okay. So I opened up the book and we have the acknowledgments. And one of the first quotes is, the only people with whom you should try to get even are those who have helped you. You know, that's how you started out. And then I love this quote. I think it's after Kevin Harrington, who's a mutual friend of ours.
Yeah. Kevin wrote the foreword of the book and was very gracious when he heard about the book. He said, "Hey, let me read it. And if it's good, I'll give you a foreword on it." And he read it and he loved it. He said, "I needed this when I was a much younger CEO." And so he was good enough to write the foreword.
You know, I love the fact that he wrote that. In fact, because he wrote that forward, I've joined EO.
Oh yeah. Great organization.
Yeah.
Really
Entrepreneurs
good.
Organization. In fact, I think tomorrow morning is my first get together with them for breakfast.
Oh, that's fabulous. I sent Vern Harnish, who's the other co-founder of that, a copy of the book as well, because he wrote Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, which was a really popular book sort of in the 90s. He's Scaling Up is his company. Gazelles is his company. And Scaling Up is his book, or maybe I have that backwards, but Vern is a hero of mine. And so it was a real pleasure to drop a book in the mail to him and say, because of the work that you've done, I've been able to add to the conversation. And that's what this is just my contribution to the conversation.
I actually have that book. I haven't read it yet. So I want to read this quote. It's on page 29. It's of chapter 1 of A CEO Only Does 3 Things. And it says, start by doing what's necessary, then what's possible, and suddenly you're doing the impossible. So with that,
we see that all the time.
I love the book so far.
That's good. I hope you've made it a little further than that quote, but good. I'm glad to hear that.
Absolutely. I have. I read 10 pages a day, and what I've been doing with yours is about a chapter a day. And so I bought the book when I first heard about it, and then I had just finished up another book. So I've only been reading this one now for a couple of days, but it's great. I really like it. So thank you so much for taking the time to write that. I know how hard writing books are. I've done a few of them myself. It's very difficult, and it's a love of labor. What I read today was in here that the average CEO reads 12 books a year. And I'm going to guess those are personal development, business leadership books, where the average person reads 3 books a year.
That's right.
And I'm going to guess those are probably fiction.
Probably so. Yep.
And I want to ask about that stat, where you got it. And the reason why is I had seen a stat somewhere else that the average person after high school reads like 1 book in their lifetime, which is another stat that's just so far out to the left. It's hard to believe. But, you know, where did you get the stat that, you know, the average person reads 3 books a year?
Putting me on the spot. I want to say that comes from sort of a footnote of an HBR article. So I'm going to have to dig for that specific site and get it back to you. But the article, I'm recalling the article, and the article was contrasting the reading habits around the world. So Japan, they read more books than America does. America reads 300 to 400% more books in a year than the Arab world does. And Europe comes out in between those two. And Russia was the lowest of all of the ones that they reported. Russia was like 0.2 books a year. And the article went on to say, largely this is because those places don't publish a lot of books. So we publish tons of books in English. Japan evidently publishes enough books, and maybe they're bilingual enough to have some English books as well. But in the Arab world, they're not publishing as many books. And in Europe, I don't know what the stat there is, but that was a large piece of it was the language. Yeah.
How many books do you think that North Koreans read every year?
One, whatever the great leader recommends, like the Oprah Book Club, but it's the Kim Jong-un Book Club. Yeah.
Yeah. So the reason I wanted you on the show was not necessarily just to talk about the book, even though it's an incredible book, and I can't wait to implement, which I've already started implementing some stuff in there, by the way, even though I'm a couple days into it. And again, I used to sit down and I would read a book in a day and implement hardly anything. So now what I try to do is the 75 hard theory or program, which is just 10 pages.
Yeah.
And so I've actually raised that a little bit where I try to do a chapter and then I will implement that chapter that day and try to implement that throughout my week and then inside my business or my personal life, whatever it is.
Well, that's
speaking
good.
Of 75 hard.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of 75 hard, you completed 75 hard, didn't you?
I did on Thanksgiving Day.
On Thanksgiving Day.
I had my first glass of wine in 92 days because I 75'd for a little while and then messed up, 75 hard a little while and messed up. And so after I got fully on track with the habits and got everything, all the kinks worked out, on Thanksgiving Day, I finished. And then the next day I was able to have a beautiful glass of Pinot. Yeah.
How was that?
That was good. The program itself was very good. I know you're a complete devotee to it. The program itself was good. Failing in the program was very difficult. I'm not someone who likes to fail. Of course, no one is. And then to fail only with myself to blame is even worse. And then to do it back to back after starting over once and doing it again, it made it really really seize the mind and finally have these one-on-one conversations with yourself where you say, okay, get it right this time. And so I did. And I'm very happy to have completed it. I think I will go through it again, but I am also happy to not be doing it right now. Although some of the habits stick. I complained to you the whole time about the water intake. And so now I'm parched all the time because I'm not drinking a gallon of water a day.
It's funny that the easiest thing to fail on is the pitcher.
It is, no doubt about it.
And I'm going to let you in on a secret. I haven't told anybody publicly. So I've done 75 hard now 3 times. I've done phase 1, phase 2. And this last time that I did it, when you started, and some other people in BA started with me. Mm-hmm. On day 40, I stopped posting what day I was on. And the reason why was on day 39, I had a 9.5 hour complete bullshit phone call meeting. It was ridiculous.
Oh, wow.
And I forgot to take my picture.
Oh, no.
And I did not realize it until several days later. And I was going through and I was like, wait a minute, I think I forgot my picture. But I did not start over, as in went and had something to drink, ate some ice cream, and then said, I'll start over tomorrow at day 1. I said, no, I made a commitment. I'm going to go 75 days doing the program. Yes, I technically failed because I forgot that one picture, but I went the full 75 days and then I did an extra day. So I went 76 days because Ed Milet, my friend Ed Milet, says always do one extra on everything. So I did an extra day, and I'm going to start up again. I think I'm going to start January 1st. We're taking the kids and family to Costa Rica for 2 weeks. I always go somewhere for Christmas. And
yeah, nice.
So I think I'm going to start over January 1st. So if you're listening to the podcast and it's before January 1st when the producer gets it produced, start up with us. Start with me on January 1st, and we'll finish together. So anyway.
Yeah. Cool.
So, and you look great. How much weight did you lose with that?
I lost 18 pounds. And I really thought I had 20 pounds to lose, but I feel like I have more to lose now. I also, just the habit of getting some exercise every day with some other health challenges that I had, that often to me was the hardest thing. That conversation to say, get outside. I live in South Georgia swamp, where it's 98 degrees, 90% humidity at 10:30 at night. Sometimes that was a hard conversation, especially when you have some physical pain holding you back and giving you a great excuse. But just the discipline of being able to do that. I listened to a bunch of books on tape while I was doing it at audible.com. I didn't count that as my reading, but it was a really nice way to do. And then I caught up with a bunch of old friends doing that sort of thing. So definitely a good program. I'm starting back on the 14th. So I have my agency Christmas party this weekend. Okay. And then on the 14th, I'm starting back up. And so we'll see how that goes. Maybe I can be finished when we see each other at BA again. I haven't done the math, but I don't know.
I did my outdoor workout this morning. It was 19 degrees.
That's going to be tricky.
Yeah. So let's get into your journey as an entrepreneur. And I did not know this until I read the book. I mean, I knew that you run a company, but I didn't know how you got started. So let's talk about that. How you grew up. I know your father was an entrepreneur, but you kind of went a different path.
I did. So a really good friend of mine had me come and speak to a group of high school students a couple of months ago. And I said, what do you want me to talk to them about? And she said, well, just tell them how to be successful. And I said, okay, cool. Inherit a 50-year-old family business that cash flows really well. Right? What great advice I have for these kids. Yeah. So that's my story. I was born into a privileged, hardworking, entrepreneurially minded family who has implemented all kinds of things that are all the rage today, like loaning your kids money and then making them pay you back with interest. That was our life growing up. My first car I bought, but I had to raise half the money, and my dad would match half the money. So it gave birth to the hustle. I was doing 1,000 things. I used to buy Chick-fil-A sandwiches and go sell them at lunch at school, or I'd go to a Costco and get a box of candy bars and sell them on the school bus. And I put all of that in my fund, to be able to buy my car and that sort of thing. So always sort of, taught literally the rich dad lifestyle of how you do things. And so it's really good. And then, but my dad said, don't be in the business that I'm in. He was in a very sales forward financial planning, insurance and benefits business. And he said, any day you can wake up and your largest client can fire you. So don't get into that business. Go find a different business for yourself. So I went to law school. Out of law school, I came out at a time when the first internet bubble was really getting started. And I made a ton of money on paper. I could paper my office with useless shares of stock from companies that I worked for and advised and that sort of thing. And then ended up in the venture capital investing space and had a great run in that space. Really a lot of fun, wonderful, impactful companies that we invested and helped grow, all of which came to a halt on 9/11. And so then I had to kind of go get a real job. I had to go out of Wonderland and get a real job. I call it Wonderland because in VC, you spend other people's money. It's really great. But, I had to go and get a real job. So I went in-house at a couple of large internet companies and ended up at AOL with a task to raise $1 billion by selling off unused or underutilized assets for AOL. And on my way to accept that job, literally waiting for the moving truck, they wanted me to move to Virginia so bad that I listed my house for 2 weeks, and then they said, forget it, we'll buy it. Just get up here and get to work on this. So they bought my house. I'm waiting on the moving truck. My phone rings, and my parents had gone to Vegas to visit some friends and family around the new year and have a good time. And my mom said, your dad is in the hospital and it's not looking very good. So I was going to call and tell you that. And I said, well, okay, keep me informed. And the moving truck's on the way. And, I'm going to get in the truck and I'm going to drive to Virginia with all of my belongings. And she said, no, you're not hearing me. Leave right now, get on a plane and be here because you may not get to say goodbye. And so unfortunately, I got to say goodbye. And so then we came home to a life that I wasn't prepared for and didn't want, and to some extent felt too good for, if that's understandable. My dad had said, don't do this. Like, you can do more with your life than what we're doing. And so I had to come home and take over the family business. And our top producer in the business was my dad's best friend, who's now my father-in-law. The guy running the show was my kid brother, who was one of my dad's best friends. And with the absence of my dad and his leadership and that sort of thing, and some, short know-it-all guy who doesn't know anything about the business coming in and telling everybody what to do, it was a really hard year for everybody. But we made it work. And as I was going through that, I heard a speaker speak a couple of years ago, and that person said, be the person you needed when you were younger. That is your only moral imperative. And I thought to myself, the person I needed that year was somebody to tell me, this is what your job description is, because I didn't know. And I was involved in things I shouldn't be involved in, like checking copier levels and seeing, can we get better expenses, and that's what, it just wasn't my job. So the book is my contribution to the younger Trey who needed some sort of guide on how to run a business.
Awesome. I remember seeing that in there, maybe yesterday, the day before. Be the person you needed when you're younger. And that was one of the things that I was, that I implemented in there. And one of the things that I have changed since reading the first chapter, so I read the first chapter and I took a couple of days off and I finished up this other book, was the CEO only does 3 things. And that's the premise of the book. So Tell us what those 3 things are, and then I'll tell you something I've implemented so far.
Yeah, those 3 things are culture, people, and numbers. And we come to those 3 things not because the CEO is especially gifted at any one of those 3 things, more so than someone else in the organization or anything of that nature. Rather, the CEO is the only person in the organization who's so high on the pyramid that they have perspective over those 3 things, right? So not in the trees, but rather seeing the forest and being able to say, as we evolve as a corporate entity, these are the things we need to do to look like what we want to look like so that we're living the way we want to be living. So culture, people, and numbers.
All right. So here's what I did. Last year, I got divorced. 3 weeks after getting divorced, my business partner, COO, that ran everything, that been with me for 7.5 years, come in, stole my hard drive, and walked out. Took 7.5 years worth of work that I paid him to do, and basically just tried to bankrupt the entire company. And also left me with $700,000 of credit card debt that I didn't know he'd racked up.
Wow.
So I went from CEO to in the weeds again, in the trenches, figuring out, trying to get through the divorce stuff and some other stuff that was going on. And what I've done in the last week or so is both of my daughters work with me. Chastity runs the social media department, runs all of my social media, does all of the video editing and production, and then used to produce the podcast. Now we have a mutual friend that does it. And then she also is in charge she's an affiliate manager. So she runs all the affiliates, and we have thousands of affiliates. So Chastity runs that side of it, the marketing side of the company. Toya at the time was my number 1 salesperson. And we didn't really have anybody doing operations except for me. And that's not one of the things I'm supposed to be doing. Right.
That's right.
So as of Monday, 3 days ago, as of this recording, 3 days ago, Toya now is the essentially president COO of the company. I haven't given her that official title yet, but she's in charge of all operations. We have several big projects going on right now. And I know based on traction in the entrepreneur operating system, you really should only do one project at a time. But where we are at growing, we can't afford to just do one project. We have to do three things at the same time because they all sync together. Mm-hmm. But Toy is doing all of that now. So now my daughters are essentially running about 90% of the company. And it's only been 3 days, Trey, but it's been so, what's the word I'm looking for? Sometimes I know the word, but I can't capture it. Not uplifting, but something relieving, where now I can focus on those three things.
Yeah, that's right.
Focus on the people. I can focus on the culture, and I can focus on the numbers. And that's really what I'm working on. And as I start doing tasks, I'm like, wait a minute, are these the three things I should be doing? And so that's how I'm starting to implement that in there.
Excellent.
And now what I'm hearing from Andy Frisella is that's what Andy teaches is culture. If you listen to his podcast, if you're lucky enough to be part of the Arte Syndicate with us, 90% of what Andy teaches is culture. And he's told me, he's like, I don't really do anything in the company. I do my podcast and I walk around and say hi to people during the day when I'm at the office. I just build culture. He doesn't even have an office. So this is a multi-billion-dollar company.
Yeah.
And he literally just built, I think have you seen his new headquarters?
No. This is Vitamin World. Is that the name of it?
Supplement superstores are his retail stores. First Form is the supplements, the protein shakes and stuff.
Yeah, gotcha.
Vitamins, protein, pre-workout.
Yeah.
I think it was $1.2 billion to build his new warehouse.
Oh, wow.
He sells more products inside his stores than every single retailer in the world except for one. Who do you think that one retail is that sells more of their own products than he does? You got them in your ears.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Not supplements. So Apple. Yeah.
Apple. Yeah. So he sells more of his own products. So GNC sells more products, but they sell everybody's products.
Yeah, right.
He sells more of his own products than any other retailer in the world. Wow. So, but that's what he teaches is just people, culture, numbers, just like what,
Well, so, I want to claim a high level of originality, but Rondi, I got these things from watching people who were really good at it. I was one of the first 100 employees at WebMD before it was even named WebMD.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And to watch those guys in the C-suite, I was a law clerk. And so they needed my help on papering transactions and things of that nature. Well, what it got me was a seat at the table in a room that I had no business being in. And I knew it at the time. And I said, I'm not going to waste this. I'm going to absorb everything that I'm seeing. So the CEO of that company, Jeff Arnold, personal hero of mine, got run out of his own company later through treachery and betrayal, which is the title of my next book, I think. Your story that you shared a minute ago. Every entrepreneur has been through this where you've overinvested in someone who didn't deserve it. Right. In the hope that you were creating in them some greatness. And then you get treachery and betrayal in response. So I think that'll be a great book. We'll see about that one. Yeah. It happened to Jeff. It happened, and again, it's something that I was able to observe from being up close. And so in my young life career, I was always around people who were doing this work. And when I went back to think about, well, how do they do it and what did they do? It wasn't that they didn't have daily activities to do. Of course they did. They had inboxes. They had interviews to be done. They had books to write from some standpoint. They had podcasts weren't a thing then, but they had things to do. They had tasks on their task list, but they didn't do any of them until they touched these three things every single day because they wanted to do something that had long-range impact. And the only way you make long-range impact come into focus and be a reality today is to do a little bit of it each day, right? It's moving the football 1 yard at a time. We'll get it 100 yards every single time. And to be able to watch really great ones do that was great. I almost put in the book a non-acknowledgments chapter to say, these are people who I don't acknowledge as part of my success because of the bad things that they did when I watched them. So I worked at Earthlink, an ISP. The management team there couldn't have been more opposite in the way that they treated culture, people, and numbers than anyone. It's just a cloud of consultants in there. No one had long-term stakes in the business. They treated their employees poorly. And if they didn't happen to have 5 million customers still paying them $20 a month for a dial-up, they wouldn't have had jobs anywhere, So I kind of wanted to put that in, but I didn't want to be too snarky in it. But I think it's, the bookends of being able to see somebody who does it well and somebody who does it poorly. That's what I dialed in here. And I said, the people that do it well touch the long term every single day.
Awesome. So the company you have now, how many employees do you guys have?
We have 19 employees in our prime business, our biggest business.
And then how many customers do you have?
82,000.
82,000 customers.
We touch 82,000 lives. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's insurance, right?
It is. Yeah.
Can you talk about your new program that you and I have been talking about a little bit?
I cannot. So we're still in, we're going to paper that up, but it's not there yet. So we might want to skip that.
Well, I can tell you, if you're listening to this right now or watching it, you are going to want to continuously follow up, because the moment that he can talk about it, I promise to share it, because
great things take a while to come to fruition, Rondi. And this is one of those things. We are down to one single deal point. It's a walk away point for both of us. Neither of us want to walk away. So that's when you really get to compromise and negotiation. So I think we have reached a point where they can say yes, and I'll accept what the yes is. And then it won't be 30 days. So we'll be ready within 30 days.
You will definitely want to follow up with Trey and I about what it is, because it can be life altering. We'll just put it
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Trey, I always ask people on the show about credit, because, that's my background is financial services, and credit has a lot to do with that. Tell me, how have you used credit, and what's your philosophy of using credit? Because we really have never talked about this personally. How have you used it or not used it in your personal life?
Well, I'm interested that you think we haven't talked about it, because I have gleaned from you a lot of things. And I think you should require, the first time you meet somebody, you need to look at their credit score and then look to see what it is a year later to see how you've helped them. So you've helped me on some tweaks, and I've even called you once or twice during the last year to say, hey, what about this or what about that, to get my credit better, because I think it should be something that's important. And of course, so it lowers your cost of renting somebody else's money. And when I explain it to people in that way, they begin to understand, oh, that's why I should care about it. And so if you are concerned at all about, what does it cost to rent somebody else's money, then you're probably already having a conversation as to what you'll do with that money. And my hope is that people will do fabulous things with it, like start companies or, buy rental rehabs or, any of those kinds of real estate opportunities that come around. In my own practice, in my own business as a CEO, we do a very intense goal setting exercise in January every year. We have a 65-page goal setting book that we go through line item by line item, everybody in the company with me. Their managers are also in the room, but it's a one-on-one thing with the CEO. Because what I want to know is what's important enough to you in your life that you would set a goal around. Because when you set that goal, and I don't care what it is, but when you set that goal, it becomes my goal as well. And we work together on doing that. Very often, and it wouldn't surprise you, but I think it would surprise a lot of other people, very often credit comes up in that conversation because people have been lax or stupid or tricked or whatever it happens to be, and maybe a mix of all of them. I know I have been all those things when it comes to my credit, but they have a credit problem. And so we begin to work through, how do I fix it and that sort of thing. And I think you probably know this, but the one gentleman that's working with me now who wants to buy his first home, but has had a credit score in the 400s or 500s, he's one of your clients now for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah, even though he's in the state of Georgia, you and I have figured out a way that he
we
could
fixed
do
that, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And so he's going through that. And as a matter of fact, he's going to apply for his first mortgage next week.
Awesome.
And we're excited about that. So what is credit for me in that world? It's helping people who may not have as many resources as I have and have worked to acquire and that sort of thing, but have them be able to get on that acquisition trail. And very often that's one thing that's preventing them from doing it.
Have you ever used credit inside your business to scale your business and do something you couldn't have?
Yeah, absolutely. We have. And, we are congenitally scared of debt as a DNA trait in our family. Even though we're entrepreneurial, we were raised with the idea to own what you own, right? That okay. Debt and leverage were signs of bad choice making in the past and that sort of thing. And so, as right as that may have been, especially when interest rates were 10 and 18 and 20% back in the late 70s, early 80s, when it made sense to pay cash for everything you could. When interest rates are 2% and 3% and 4%, that's free money a lot of the time. Of course, you are still very conscientious about what you do, what risk you take alongside it, and can what you borrow the money for pay you back in a great way. So we don't borrow money to buy depreciable assets. We borrow money to invest in things that appreciate over time. And that's what we have used in our business. So this year specifically, we've borrowed money to fund a marketing campaign that we probably could have funded out of cash, but maybe would have taken our cash below a level that we were comfortable with. So we used credit for sure to go and do some things. And that campaign has paid off very nicely. And in our business, if you make a sale, you keep that sale typically for 10 years. And so it's a very good upside when you hit. And just this year, we have really done some mature thinking on how do we leverage and grow.
Yeah, I recently did that. I leased, and leasing's really expensive. And there's sometimes when you want to lease as a business, and sometimes you don't. But I had went to purchase folder, a copy machine, a special printer. It's about $180,000 worth of equipment. And it is depreciating equipment, but it is going to save me about $7,000 a month in labor costs and postage. Yeah. My lease payment on it for the next 4 years is $3,200 a month. Seems like a lot of money, but it's saving me $7,000 estimated, and it should last for 10 to 15 years worth of the product. Should last 10 to 15 years. But the reason that I didn't pay cash, because the lease is expensive, it's like it averages out about 22% interest.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The reason that I did not pay cash for it, Trey, was because my business gets, with the stroke of a pen, can instantly be wiped out if the politicians decide that they're no longer going to let me help people fix their credit. And we're going into November, December, January are the leanest months of the year for us. Come February, our wallets start getting fatter again. And so I looked at it as I can take this almost $200,000 out of the operating account, pay cash, save 20% interest over the next year, or I can wait until February and then February pay it off.
Yeah.
And so that's what I chose to do, is just lease it. And by doing this, I found out through Kingsley, which is my tax professional. Not sure if you use him or not, but
I do.
Because it's a lease, when I pay off that lease in February, 100% write-off. I don't have to depreciate it because I didn't buy it. So for me, looking at it, because I leased it, I get 100% depreciation immediately because they look at that as a lease payment, versus if I bought it, I'd have to depreciate that over a 5 to 10 year period. So sometimes it makes sense to purchase or use credit for depreciating assets, and sometimes it doesn't. But I agree with you on that. Most of the time you shouldn't, especially consumer debt. A car. I bought a Jeep a few days ago. Guess what? I financed it. Here's why. Because I say whenever you buy a vehicle from the dealership, you should always finance it through the dealership. Always. I saved about $7,500 for financing it because they get kickbacks from the bank.
Mm-hmm.
So I purchased it with a loan. I'm going to pay the loan down in the next couple of days. So I'll pay interest on $100 to $200. But I'm going to keep the loan open. So I save that $7,500 because if I pay off the loan early, they bill me for that $7,500 because they get a charge back.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Consumer debt, for the most part, should never be financed with a credit card or with a loan. Consumer debt should be cash. And then your debt that is making you money, like our apartment complexes. Corey and I got $95 million of apartment complexes. Obviously, we didn't put cash on that. Financed it.
Exactly right.
We're getting that at 3.5% non-recourse loans, that's less than inflation.
Oh, that's great. All right. I'm going to call you for that hookup because I've got a multifamily in my on my radar right now. Rondi, I don't know if you guys talk about sort of the concept of the family bank and that sort of thing. I know you're a life insurance believer as well. We've always used a family bank. So our cars, when we purchase a depreciable asset, we pay a 5 to 7% interest rate on those, even though the credit union would give us 2% or 1.5%. I've even seen teaser rates and that sort of thing. But our thinking there is that if we have to pay interest, we'd rather pay ourselves interest than someone else. And so we family bank that stuff as much as we can, when it makes sense to do that.
I'd like you to talk about family bank because you and I talked about it, and I went to some of my family members to do it, and it was just, it's not going to work with my siblings.
Yeah.
But with my daughters, it's going to work. That's something I want to do. So let's talk about that. Let's take a few minutes and talk about what a family bank is.
Just the general concept is that you have a group of family members who want to be able to borrow money from time to time and have some, sufficient cash to be able to put up and stake the bank today. And so the idea behind it is that you're in control of the terms, right? So you can set a high interest, a low interest, whatever the happenstance is. You can set, forgiveness terms. So a lot of people will use their family bank to say, you can go and try this. And if it doesn't work, then, we will forgive 25, 50%, 100%, or whatever it happens to be. So that you're making the transition to entrepreneurialism easier for someone. A lot of people finance college for their kids through a family bank. We use a super conservative, whole life based policy. The cash flow in that policy has been building up for 35 years now. And when the death benefit comes about because of the individual whose life securing it is pretty up in age now, that money will go into a family trust, and the trust will then loan it out to family members. So this is not a quick thing to do necessarily, but we do it. We started our own family bank, and again, just a concept. It's not a chartered institution. We don't even have an entity on it, and we started it with $10,000. So whoever needed money on the $10,000 borrowed it, paid it back at 8% interest. We pay market or above, and it was good. And so, when grandma's sitting on a nest egg that she's never going to invest and she's doing a laddered CD strategy at 0.5% interest or something of that nature, it might make a lot of sense for someone to come in and borrow and pay her a higher rate that she probably will use to live on, or, at least have that nest egg built up. But to your point earlier, you really have to choose your partners correctly. And, there's no greater friction in a family than between siblings sometimes. And so that's something that we definitely have had to navigate. My brother and I worked together for 12 out of the 15 years that I've run the business. And so he trusted me and I trusted him to do the right thing with the funds. And we had veto right over each other on it. And there were times when I came in and wanted to borrow money for a speculative deal because I'm quite a speculator, and he turned me down. There was a time that he wanted to buy something which I felt was really just in a fun hobby style project, and I turned him down. And so, we didn't hold grudges on those things. But I think the family bank is one of these secret concepts that rich people use that the rest of us don't know about until we find out about them and start using them and building them. Yeah.
I know that Rockefeller started that, and they use whole life because that's what they had back then. And that's something that I'm teaching. In fact, I have a webinar, how to become a bank, on tomorrow night at
Cool.
6 p.m. Pacific. So by the time you hear this podcast, I've already done it, but there'll be a recording of how to become a bank. And that's essentially what we're doing, is we're teaching people how to become a family bank, or a bank that you, and again, it's not a charter bank, but we're just calling it a bank, where it's your money you can borrow against your life insurance policy. We choose to use index universal life because it's a much greater return than the traditional old whole life policies.
For sure.
But the Rockefellers did that. They would put the whole life insurance on the oldest person in the family. When that person would pass away, they would take 20% of the preceding, the payout, start a whole life policy on the youngest person in the family, and then divvy out the 80% to the family bank. And over their time, they've literally created, through insurance, hundreds of millions of dollars of insurance money. And they paid for the whole thing from the very first policy.
Yep, exactly right. The Rothschilds, exactly the same thing. They literally were the bank, called the Rothschild Bank, the Red Shield Bank. They literally were the bank. And, they got into the business of amassing capital in order to loan it to other people for good interest and also strategic objectives, right? So when they became a big enough lender to the crown or something of that nature, then lo and behold, other opportunities to make wealth presented themselves, which they took advantage of. Gosh, I'd like to be in a similar situation at some point as well with my family bank.
Yeah. There was and I don't know if it's a true quote or not, so you can fact check me on it, but it's Rothschild. One of them said, "I don't care who makes the rules, because it doesn't matter who makes the rules. It matters who holds the gold."
Yeah.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
Did I just butcher that?
No, you got it. I care not who writes a nation's laws, but rather who counts the money or something of that nature. Yeah.
Basically what he's saying is, I don't care what your rules and laws are, because I have all the gold. I control the bank. So I can do anything I want. Trey, It's been awesome having you on the show. If there's anything I can do for you, please let me know. On the book, where can we find it? I'm going to put it in the show notes, by the way. It's going to be the show notes. You can get it right from there. But if you're driving and you just want to click it real quick, where can they get it?
Yeah, you can go to Amazon. It's on Amazon. You mentioned Traction earlier. So the first week, we beat out in 3 different categories. One of my favorite business books, which is Traction. One of my other favorite business books, which I'm sure you've read, which is called The Goal. And I took a screenshot of that, and I'm going to have that printed and framed in my office, because we beat those guys on bestseller status for the intro week of the book. So that was really exciting. But yeah, it's on Amazon. Got hardback, paperback, and we are working first quarter of next year to produce an Audible track book as well.
Cool. And again, the book is A CEO Only Does 3 Things, and it's written by Trey Taylor. So Trey, thanks so much. Do you want people to find you on social media? Is that something that's
absolutely. So the website that we have for our consulting, speaking, mentoring, and that sort of thing, we're launching some interesting initiatives, which I think you'll hear about at BA in the first quarter. Is www.trinity-blue.com. Trinity Blue is our consulting company. And I've got some really interesting people involved in that, doing a lot of great things. So trinity-blue.com is where you can find me there. And I'm on LinkedIn quite frequently as well. So you can find me there. I'm Trey Taylor, JD on that.
Trey Taylor, JD. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, Trey, thanks so much. I know you got a lot of stuff to do. I appreciate you spending the time with me here, and appreciate everything else you do for us.
Thanks, Rondi. Really appreciate you and your leadership and friendship.